Mexico, just across the U.S. southern border. Actually, the U.S. southern border is just about 100 yards that way. So I just wanted to go live and give you a little sense of what's going on down here on the southern border with all the changes that Donald Trump has made and his first days in office, how that has affected the migration flows, how that's affected the relations between U.S. and Mexico, and so on and so forth. Now, first thing I want to show you is I'm going to actually turn the camera this way a little bit. And there's a wonderful little taco stand right here. But if you see that little brown building right behind the taco stand right there, that building right there, that is an office, this very small office called the Refugee Welcome Center. Or I'm sorry, the Refugee Welcome Center. And it's a organization that is by ¿De dónde son? ¿De dónde son? De aquí mismo. Oh, Ciudad de México. Okay. Um, that's put on by an organization called Al Otro Lado, which is an organization that gets funding from the United States. There's turns out lots and lots and lots of non-governmental organizations, UN related organizations, and so on and so forth that over the last 4 or 5 years have been getting quite a bit of money from the US government, not to stop the flow of migration, but to facilitate it, to actually help more people migrate more easily, safely, quickly, and cheaply to the United States. Something like 230 NGOs, as well as more than 50, I guess you'd call it UN related organizations, who have been paid, gotten money from the U.S. taxpayer in order to help facilitate this migration going all the way up to the United States. And they start actually right at the border of like Venezuela, sometimes even within the countries people are leaving from. So, for example, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go down to a place called Cucuta, Colombia, which is right on the border with Venezuela. And the last time I was there, a couple of years ago, the Organization for Immigration and Migration, OIM, had tents set up right on the border with Venezuela that were taking people in as they came across the border out of Venezuela into Colombia, and then helping them register, getting them debit cards with money on it that would help them make their way north to the United States illegally. So if you wonder who's paying for these millions of people who have been coming into the United States over the past several years, you are. If you're in the United States, your tax dollars has helped to fund this. And Al Otro Lado, right there, that organization was one of those that was receiving money to the tune of about $6 million a year. Now, right now, there's nobody there. It's empty. And that's probably because there's nobody there. If you came here up until January 20th, on any given day, there would be hundreds of people standing in this square right out here, just at the entrance to uh, the border crossing, which is right there. You can see that gate right there. That's the entrance to the border crossing. And so if you walk in there, that's the pedestrian entrance that goes across to the United States. So what these people would do is they would fill out a online app called the CBP One app, and they would get pre-qualified to get an appointment to make an asylum claim. Now, they weren't being given asylum. They weren't even having their asylum claim adjudicated, actually. What they were doing was getting an appointment to make an asylum claim. And that initial appointment, then if they pass that screening, then they get given a date sometime in the future, usually 2, 3 years down the road, uh, and they have to show back up to court to actually have their asylum claim adjudicated. So this was just the initial appointment, but it was enough to get them into the United States. The big problem, obviously, was all the people that were flooding in throughout the Biden administration, and it was overwhelming Border Patrol right here along the border because they would show up and they weren't trying to sneak in by and large, or maybe 20% were sneaking in and 80% were just showing up at the border crossing. And they would turn themselves to Border Patrol and say, I want to make an asylum claim. And so Border Patrol had to actually process all those people, and it just got to be too much. And obviously, that was hurting the Biden administration politically. And so it was an idea that they had to come up with this app where they could do their initial appointment, make their initial asylum claim online, and get pre-qualified to come into the United States. So there were some other requirements that they had to meet in order to get that appointment. Rather, it wasn't as easy as just filling out a form. And in short order, that CBP One app got overwhelmed and did not have enough bandwidth. So even to get your appointment through CBP One would take 3, 4 months, perhaps. There was the idea behind the CBP One app, to hear the Biden administration tell it, was that it would keep people from having to pay the cartels to transport them illegally across Mexico up, very dangerous. A lot of those cartels would charge a couple $1,000s. And then when they got up here, they'd say, oh, actually it was $10,000. Here's, you have to put in Western Union right away and get more money to us if you want to actually get in the United States, right? That was not, obviously dangerous for them. So the CBP One app was like, okay, we'll avoid all the fraud and abuse and everything that goes on, and let people make those claims from inside Colombia, inside Cuba, inside countries all over the world. At first, it was only 4 countries, and then they opened it up to everybody. So what that actually did was created a whole nother industry of fraud and waste and abuse, where people would make fake websites and say, if you go here, we can help you get your asylum appointment quicker. We'll get you one within a week, within 2 weeks, whatever. It costs you an extra $500, but then you won't have to spend months and months in Mexico waiting for your appointment or whatever. And people would pay that, and it turned out to be fraud. It was just, wasn't anything actually. So, and a lot of that money was going to organizations actually like this one over here. So I'm going to turn the camera around again and show you this building right there. That kind of tan building there was or is the office for this organization called Al Otro Lado. Now, my good friend Oscar Ramirez, who's a Mexican journalist that lives here in Tijuana, actually did a bunch of reporting on them and a bunch of research, and found out that they were actually part of this organization that was overcharging people. It was charging people extra, a fee to get their appointment through CBP One, even though there is no fee to get your appointment through CBP One. But the migrants didn't know that, so they were paying this organization in more money, even though they were already getting $6 million a year from the United States. They were making more money that way. Also, Al Otro Lado was assisting people with getting across into the United States. They would find out that if, for example, you are a family unit going across, you're more likely to get let in than if you're a military age male and or a single female or whatever. So they would forge marriage licenses right here and sell them that were going across, or give them to the migrants going across. I don't know. In order to help them get into the United States more easily. Again, this is an organization that's taking money from the U.S. government in order to help, ostensibly, the migrants. And I would say that there is at least a non-zero chance that the government didn't know that they were assisting people with defrauding the U.S. government. That's a hard claim to make, but it's that it's just rife for abuse. Let's put it that way. Just rife for abuse. So actually, there's a helicopter going over right now. Let's see if I can turn that around and show you that. Right up there. There have been patrols. That's a DEA helicopter or a Border Patrol helicopter, could be. There have been a lot of helicopters, troops, etc., going along the border over the last couple of days since I've gotten here, and they are uh, putting a stop to the migrant crossings, without a doubt. Cindy, the answer to your question is yes. Thank you very much. So we talked to some of the migrants today. Actually, we talked to a Mexican guy that was right here by where that lady's walking. And he had actually tried to cross the border illegally yesterday. Uh, so this is after all of this happened, after they canceled the CBP One app. When they canceled the CBP One app, all of the people who would have been out here waiting for their appointments every day lost all their appointments. Everything got canceled. So there were hundreds of people in line. The president got inaugurated at 12 p.m. Eastern time. That would have been 9 a.m. Uh, here Pacific time, and there were people that had appointments at 9:30 and 10 o'clock that got shut off. And sorry, no more appointments. It's done. We talked to two Venezuelans here uh, earlier today who had been in that line and had gotten their appointments canceled. And they're like, we spent thousands of dollars and took 4 months to get here from Venezuela. It took 4 months. We had to walk through the Darien Gap. This guy had brought his wife and his 7-year-old daughter, which that right there is, in my opinion, child abuse. I mean, if it were up to me, if I was the president of Panama, I would be arresting people that showed up in the Darien Gap with a child, because they will haul toddlers, breast babies through uh, the Darien Gap, and it's just so dangerous. It's so miserable, and to think that they do that is just mind-boggling. Okay, um, so we talked to those Venezuelan guys. They were saying they got their appointments canceled. Now they don't know what to do. They're here with their wife, and he's here with his wife and his daughter. The other guy was there with a couple. There's like 7 of them all traveling together, and they're like, we can't really work. We don't really have any money. Staying here along the border. To them, it's very expensive to be here in Tijuana. The cost of living here in Tijuana is a little higher than many places in Mexico, because there's a lot of Americans that live here in Tijuana and work in the United States, go back and forth through this port of entry every day. So they were unsure of what to do. And I've talked to them like, well, I mean, you're breaking the law, right? Coming illegally into the United States, right? So you knew this was, you can't be too uh, surprised. Even when you were halfway here, you knew that Donald Trump was going to be the next president. He had said he was going to do this, and they're like, "Well, yeah, but we didn't really think they'd do it right away." We have family that are in the United States who have migrated earlier, aunts and uncles and cousins and things, and we don't. We figure if they can come, we should be able to come too. So they were like, "Hey, this is really not fair. Now we're kind of stuck here. We really don't know what to do or where to go." Well, the Mexican government has been putting together buses and has been uh, shipping people back south, away from the border, not necessarily back to Venezuela, but back to someplace cheaper than here. And a lot of these people have said, well, I guess I'm just going to try to get a job, stay here in Mexico, and now I'll just try to get in legally. amazing. There's actually quite a few people who were coming illegally who have said, well, if I can't come in illegally, I guess I'll come in legally now and just wait in Mexico and do my, do it the right way. There are also a lot of Mexicans, especially that we've talked to, who say, I have been trying to get a visa, a tourist visa, spousal visa, whatever, to get into the United States. And it was taking forever. And so I'm happy about what Donald Trump is doing because now it should make it fair for everybody, and I'm willing to do it the right way. I've been going through the process, but there were so many people that were crossing illegally that it took a lot of resources away from the United States. I understand that, so we're hoping that it will speed up the process of getting in legally. Okay, Cheryl, I see you saying we need cheaper groceries and rent prices. You've posted that about 60 times now, so that's enough. That's cool. I hear you. I understand. That's not what this live is about. I'm not here to talk about groceries and cheaper prices. I'm here to talk about immigration because I'm right on the border with Mexico. And so give it a rest, please. Okay. Now, I am seeing uh, a lot fewer people here than have been here in the recent past. Talking to some of these people that run the taco stands and things like that, they're saying, "Oh my goodness, that is just like it's so different now." Just immediately when Trump got inaugurated, it all just came to a screeching halt. So I just want to point out that during the Biden administration, whenever they were asked about this, that Muppet Karine Jean Pierre would say, we are doing a great job at the southern border. The border is more secure than it's ever been. And, well, what about all these people coming in? Well, I mean, there's no possible way to actually stop all these people from coming in, she'd say. You heard that over and over and over again. Like, we're doing all that there is to do. But then as soon as Donald Trump took office, boom, it just stopped. That's the deterrent effect of backing up what you promised to do. And so now there are just tons and tons of people. They say over a million who had been in the CBP1 system. This is not just in Mexico, but around the world. There were something like 30,000 of them right here in uh, Tijuana. And those people are now starting over. I mean, they don't know what to do. You understand a lot of people that left their homes in Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, whatever. They don't really have much to go back to. But it also bears keeping in mind that many of those people were already living outside of Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, whatever, for years before they tried to come to the United States. So they had a job in Ecuador or Chile. They had been working in Brazil, whatever, but they decided that now was the time to go to the United States because they make more money in the United States. That automatically disqualifies them for um, asylum. They cannot get asylum when they're coming just for uh, a better job. To make more money is not that doesn't give you an asylum claim, right? So will the Darien Gap be closed? Well, no, it's not closed, but it's down to a trickle now, something that we haven't seen in probably 8 years. Uh, no, 10, 12 years maybe, the number of people coming through the Darien Gap. And those people that are coming through the Darien Gap, it's like 15 a day now. I mean, we were up to 5,000 a day for a long time during the Biden administration coming through the Darien Gap in Panama, between Panama and Colombia. But now they said it was like 15 a day. And so, it, again, people know, don't come. If they do come, those 15 people that are coming through, they get picked up by Panama and they get put on an airplane and they get sent back home from Panama. They never even make it past Panama at this point. But so, what is the Mexican government doing to help the United States with this? Well, not a lot. They are offering 2,000 pesos to people Mexicans who get kicked out of the United States. How many Marines are protecting the border? About 500 as of yesterday. Uh, so when a Mexican citizen gets deported into Mexico from the U.S., the Mexican government has said they will give them it's about $120, 2,000 pesos, something like that, maybe about $100, just to get started again and whatever. Okay, but they don't give that money to non-Mexican citizens, and they they are not stopping the Trump administration from sending people into Mexico, as some people have said. There was an issue yesterday with a flight, a military flight out of the United States that was supposed to be deporting people into Mexico, and the Mexican government put a stop to it, wouldn't allow them to come, and it's making a lot of waves in the news. And they're reporting that Mexico is actively thwarting the United States to send people back. Uh, so that actually is not what happened. That airplane just didn't file the right paperwork to be able to take off and get here to Panama. So there was a bit of a snafu with that, and that's all. So the Mexicans are not actively trying to stop the United States from sending people back that we have seen at all. Now, somebody's asking if the construction has restarted along the border wall. Yes. Yesterday afternoon, I did a live from down here over on my channel. So if you go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, you can watch the lives that I do over there, or go to chuckholton.com and you can find articles, photographs, little short videos that I'm, showing from wherever I am, and lots of other material I can't show you on YouTube. Go to chuckholton.com and sign up over there to see that. But on the live I did yesterday from the border wall, we showed that they have already restarted construction on parts of the wall that needed it. Now, it was the very end of the wall, right on the Pacific Ocean, and there's a double layer wall there. The Mexican layer was only 15 feet high. They're making it now 30 feet high, no climb fence, very difficult to get over. And they're rapidly moving to plug all the gaps in the wall. And I would venture to say that it won't take more than a year or two in the Trump administration to actually finish building that wall. Let's hope. Let's hope. There were still some very big gaps that needed to be taken care of, and it looks like those will be taken care of shortly. Now, also, just outside of Tijuana, where I'm standing, in a place called Yacumba, that's the American side, there's a park over there. People were hiking in the park 2 days ago, and they ran into some cartel members who were on the Mexican side. The cartel members shot at the American hikers and wounded one of them over there. So now that whole area is just locked down. That's part of where the Marines are over there, and that's part of where they have National Guardsmen from here in Mexico that are on this side locking all that down. We wanted to get out there, but it's almost impossible to get out there at this point. There are shelters throughout Tijuana that house the migrants, and they're giving them a place to stay, but they're all full. We went to one today, and the shelter itself is full. They've got tents set up outside the shelter that are also full, and it is pretty uh, well. It's creating sort of a humanitarian crisis here in in the northern part of Mexico. They obviously, there's not a lot of money here, and they don't have the money or the ability to uh, pay for living expenses for all these migrants. We've also heard from some of the migrants themselves that the there have been some instances of the migrants being robbed by police who stop them, search them, and ask for bribes or steal whatever they've got. So they are, going back to the last Trump administration, uh, they had that remain in Mexico policy, and it worked very well. They managed to basically reduced the amount of people coming into the United States illegally to a trickle. Very, very few people coming in. And uh, that was just because they would have to stay here for a matter of years, most likely, before their case would get heard. And so the Remain in Mexico policy put back into place is actually making big difference here with the people that are trying to get into the U.S. And it actually, I don't think it's unfair. It kind of makes sense. It doesn't really make sense for the American taxpayer to take people that have about a 90% chance of not qualifying for asylum in the United States because they are economic migrants. There's just no two ways about that. And allowing them to enter the United States anyway and then live there for 2, 3 years before their case is even heard. It's not really fair. And not only is it not fair to Americans who, according to some organizations, think tanks, have to pay about $66,000 for every migrant family that's illegally in the United States. So it's not fair for Americans, but I would say it's also not fair to the migrants themselves, because if they are allowed into the United States in order to wait out their asylum claim, imagine you actually do have an asylum claim, right? Imagine you are legit. You got to wait 3 years to get the court hearing to find out if they're going to grant you asylum. And during that 3 year period, you are not allowed to leave the United States. So I'll give you an example. I met a guy. I'm just moving the camera around just to kind of show you what's happening. It's very uh, looks like they've actually closed the border crossing. I wonder if it's getting late for them or something. Um, I know a guy that I met in Panama as he was walking out of the Darien Gap. He was from Pakistan, and he was coming to make an asylum claim in the United States. Obviously, he had to cross through like probably a dozen or more uh, countries between Pakistan and the U.S. to get to the U.S. Any of those other dozen countries, he could have made an asylum claim, but he didn't. He went all the way to the United States. So he's obviously not a true asylum seeker, right? But this was several years ago. I found him right as he came out of the Darien Gap, and he was in very bad shape. We talked to him there. He said, he had left his wife and his young son in Pakistan and had gotten on a ship and gone to Brazil and then worked their way up through Colombia, walked across the Darien Gap, took him 6 days. He was almost dead. And then eventually I kept in touch with him. Eventually he made it to the US. And when he made it to the US, I kept in touch with him. He went to Chicago. He had a friend there and was sleeping on his friend's couch and started driving an Uber car. So, Doris, I'll answer your question in a second. He was driving an Uber, and it wasn't even his Uber, it was somebody else's Uber, and was uh, just he would give the guy whose Uber it was a little money, and then he would pretend to be the guy who was the Uber driver, and he would go drive, and so that's how he made money. But he couldn't get an appointment for like 2.5 years. Well, they won't let him leave the United States to go visit his family, so he waited 2.5 years, and like a month before he had his um, asylum hearing, COVID hit. And when that happened, he lost his appointment. They closed everything down. And so he had to get back in line and wait another 2.5 years, something like that. So now he's going on 5 years that he's been unable to go home and see his family. Now, if they had remained in Mexico policy, he would be able to uh, to stay here in Mexico and would be able to come and go. If he wanted to fly home and see his family, he could, and it would just be a better situation for everybody involved. Does that make sense? Okay, now somebody's asking. Um, somebody's asked about the taxis. This is the taxi stand for the border crossing. You see all those taxis there, right? So this is the border crossing from the United States. The U.S. is right over this way, right down there. That's the United States. Just lost audio. Did I just lose audio? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, folks, I've got a live broadcast I've got to do. And so I'm going to have to let you go. But I appreciate all of you. God bless you. And we'll see you again next time. And if something comes up here, I will put it up. Uh,